A global trade war is intensifying, and this time it's not the United States in the crossfire. China just hit European brandy with a 40% tariff, a move likely to strain middle-class consumers in China who view luxury imports as status symbols. This could ripple into related sectors like hospitality and luxury tourism, where French brandy often features prominently in high-end dining and celebrations. A similar scenario unfolded during past tariffs on whiskey imports, which led to noticeable declines in sales and a shift toward locally produced alternatives. Could this retaliation cripple the EU economy at a time when it's already battling inflation and slowing growth? China's decision to impose significant tariffs on EU brandy is a direct response to the European Union's recently introduced tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. The European Commission claimed that Chinese EV makers were benefiting from unfair subsidies, enabling them to sell at artificially low prices in European markets. In retaliation, Beijing targeted one of Europe's luxury exports, brandy, a symbol of its premium goods sector. Chinese officials framed the move as necessary to protect domestic producers, while retaliating against what they termed discriminatory practices. Financial data from industry reports show that French brandy exports to China were worth over $1.5 billion annually prior to these tariffs. With the new 40% levy, this revenue stream faces significant disruption. The question now looms: will this escalate into a broader trade war? The European Commission initiated an investigation into Chinese EV subsidies in September 2023, accusing manufacturers of benefiting from state support, such as direct subsidies, low-interest loans, and tax breaks. These measures allegedly allowed Chinese EVs to undercut European competitors by up to 20 to 30% in price. A report from the Financial Times highlighted how this investigation, viewed as a precursor to protective tariffs, infuriated Beijing. China's Ministry of Commerce issued a sharp rebuttal, accusing the EU of protectionism and threatening retaliatory measures. Experts like Alicia Garcia Herrero, a senior fellow at Bruegel, warned that such tit-for-tat moves could destabilize global supply chains, particularly in the automotive and luxury goods industries. China sees the EU's tariffs as an attack on its economic model, which relies on state-backed industrial policies to drive technological advancements. Chinese officials argue that subsidies are a legitimate tool for developing industries critical to the green transition. EV exports accounted for $46 billion of China's trade in 2023, making Europe a vital market. By imposing tariffs, the EU threatens to limit China's market share and weaken its dominance in the global EV sector. Analysts at Bloomberg Economics warn that such measures could push Chinese manufacturers to double down on emerging markets like Southeast Asia and Africa, further realigning global trade flows. Chinese automakers, including industry leaders like BYD and NIO, benefit from a vertically integrated supply chain that drastically reduces production costs. BYD, for example, manufactures its batteries in-house, cutting reliance on external suppliers. This gives it a significant edge over European manufacturers, who depend on imported components and face higher labor costs. A 2023 report from McKinsey estimated that Chinese EVs are, on average, 25% cheaper to produce than their European counterparts. Add to this the economies of scale achieved by producing for a massive domestic market, and the cost disparity becomes stark. China's government provides a comprehensive suite of subsidies to its EV sector. These include tax rebates. Chinese consumers receive up to $4,000 in rebates when purchasing electric vehicles. Low-interest loans. State-owned banks offer manufacturers favorable financing terms to expand production facilities. Research grants. Billions are funneled into R&D, allowing firms like BYD and CATL to develop cutting-edge battery technologies. According to a Reuters investigation, these subsidies accounted for nearly 15% of the production costs of Chinese EVs in 2022. European automakers, constrained by stricter EU regulations, find it difficult to compete. Please like and subscribe. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us grow. Thank you. China is the third largest market for French brandy, with Hennessy and Rémy Martin leading the charge. Together, these brands account for over 70% of the $1.5 billion in annual exports. Chinese consumers associate French brandy with luxury and status, making it a key component of their expanding middle-class lifestyle. However, with tariffs now pushing prices up by 40%, demand could plummet. Analysts at Le Monde predict a 25% drop in sales by mid-2024. Competing luxury markets, such as whiskey from Japan and the US, may seize the opportunity to fill the gap. The luxury goods sector, encompassing fashion, jewelry, and spirits, contributes approximately 10% to the EU's GDP. If brandy tariffs set a precedent, other luxury exports could face similar barriers. China accounts for nearly 30% of global luxury consumption, making any disruption to this market a significant economic threat. Jean-Claude Biver, a veteran of the luxury watch industry, remarked in a recent FT interview, "If China targets European luxury systematically, it would be a devastating blow." China controls over 70% of global lithium-ion battery production and dominates the refining of critical minerals like lithium and cobalt. For European EV manufacturers, this dependency creates a precarious situation. Consider a mid-sized EV producer in Germany struggling to meet production deadlines because of delayed battery imports from China. These bottlenecks not only increase costs, but also force manufacturers to pass the burden onto consumers through higher vehicle prices. Such scenarios underscore how Europe's reliance on Chinese batteries could disrupt its transition to clean energy and erode its competitive edge in the global EV market. This monopolistic grip poses a strategic risk for Europe, which aims to transition to clean energy but depends heavily on Chinese imports. In 2023, Europe imported $10 billion worth of EV batteries and components from China. Supply disruptions or price increases could derail the EU's green transition goals, as noted by a report from the International Energy Agency, IEA. The European Battery Alliance, or EBA, launched in 2017, aims to reduce dependency on Chinese imports by fostering domestic production. Key initiatives include gigafactory investments, where companies like Northvolt are building large-scale battery production facilities in Europe. Additionally, the EU is securing raw material partnerships with countries like Australia and Canada for critical mineral supplies. However, the EBA's progress has been slow. Experts like Maria Mendelus of We Mean Business Coalition argue that more aggressive funding is needed to close the gap with China. This escalating trade conflict underscores the shifting dynamics in global geopolitics. Beyond its immediate economic ramifications, this conflict also intersects with broader strategic priorities. For instance, EU-China collaborations in critical sectors like green energy and AI could face setbacks, potentially delaying progress on shared goals like carbon neutrality. Simultaneously, the role of global alliances like BRICS looms large, as China leverages its alignment with these nations to counter Western economic dominance. These interconnected dynamics reveal how trade disputes are increasingly entangled with broader geopolitical strategies, reshaping alliances and priorities on a global scale. China's alignment with the BRICS nations bolsters its ability to counter Western trade barriers. Recent BRICS initiatives, such as a potential shared currency, highlight efforts to diminish reliance on Western-dominated financial systems. Meanwhile, the EU's reliance on Chinese goods and materials exposes its vulnerability in a multipolar world. Analysts at The Economist suggest that Europe must diversify its trade relationships to avoid being caught in future economic crossfires. China's dual circulation strategy prioritizes domestic consumption while maintaining export competitiveness. By fostering a self-reliant economy, Beijing reduces its exposure to external shocks. For instance, domestic EV sales surged 50% in 2023, driven by government incentives and a burgeoning middle class. This internal demand cushions the impact of Western trade restrictions, allowing China to maintain economic growth despite external challenges. The EU has filed a formal complaint with the World Trade Organization, arguing that China's tariffs violate international trade agreements. European officials claim that Beijing's actions amount to economic coercion. Trade law expert Dr. Simon Lester, writing in the Wall Street Journal, notes that WTO rulings often take years, rendering immediate relief unlikely. However, a favorable decision for the EU could set a precedent, discouraging retaliatory tariffs in future disputes. Higher tariffs could redirect Chinese consumers toward domestic brands or alternative imports like whiskey and vodka. Already, local distillers such as Jiang Xiaobai are positioning themselves as affordable luxury alternatives. A survey by Caixin revealed that 42% of Chinese consumers would switch to domestic brands if foreign spirits became too expensive. This trend could permanently alter market dynamics, reducing Europe's foothold in one of its most lucrative sectors. The current standoff reflects broader tensions in China-EU relations. While both sides have significant economic interdependence, diverging policies on trade, technology, and human rights create friction. Diplomatic efforts, such as the EU-China Comprehensive Agreement on Investment, remain stalled, raising concerns about long-term implications. This stagnation could push the EU to accelerate initiatives aimed at self-reliance, such as diversifying trade partners and increasing investments in domestic production. Conversely, it may also deepen China's focus on strengthening ties with alternative markets, reshaping global trade relationships. Without mutual concessions, this trade conflict could deepen, risking long-term economic decoupling. However, voices like Pascal Lamy, former WTO Director General, stress that pragmatism must prevail to avoid mutual economic harm. As tariffs stack up and trade wars intensify, one thing is clear: the stakes for both China and the EU have never been higher. Will Europe's luxury sector and EV industry weather this storm, or is this just the beginning of a global economic realignment? We're glad you're enjoying this video. Please like and subscribe. Check out another video that is now on your screen.